Part 31. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 301. Birds, like most meats, can be eaten in many ways. They can be stewed, braised, diced, and fried, or roasted. Keek even searched for more cooking methods for Man Bao. Of course, because she is not very good at cooking, she just remembered to tell the cook. However, the cook of the Bai family is not the little Qian family. As soon as she heard that Miss Man Bao was going to wrap the bird in mud and bury it in the soil, she refused with a smile. "Miss Man, how do you eat this bird with feathers? I'll give it to you. How about you braise a few, and stew a few more? If you want to eat roasted, how about I roast two for you?" Bai Shanbao counted it and felt that it was almost the same, so he whispered to Man Bao, "My grandmother and mother also want to eat it. We will make it ourselves when we catch it tomorrow, but will it be delicious if it is wrapped in mud and cooked?" Man Bao also hesitated. It should be delicious. After all, it is the cooking method given by Coco. The meat of the bird is relatively tender, but very little. Even the most meaty bird's leg has not much meat. But Man Bao and Bai Shanbao ate with relish and were so happy. The two agreed that they would be arrested again tomorrow. When Lu came over after hearing the news, the two children were sitting opposite to each other at the door of the kitchen. Lu Shi took a deep breath and stepped forward. When the two children saw Lu, they were both happy and enthusiastic to invite her. "Grandma, Grandma Lu, are you here to eat birds too?" Liu's eyes fell on the plate beside him. The cook hurried out of the kitchen, bowed her head and explained, "Young master, let it be ready and send it to the old lady and the lady together." Lu took a deep breath, squeezed a smile on his face, lowered his head and asked the two children, "How many have you eaten?" Both held out 3 fingers. Lu Shi said with a smile, "That's enough. It's not good to eat too much of anything. Come here, pick 2 out of each, and send them to the old lady next door, saying that it is the filial piety of the young master and Miss Man." The two children reluctantly watched the cook pick out the ready-made birds from the plate and hand them over to the servants on the side. Lu Shi pointed at the rest and said, "Send these to my wife and I's room. We'll eat later. There are not many left, just 2 at most of each kind." The two children watched eagerly as the rest walked away from them. Lu rubbed their heads with a smile, and said with a smile, "Drink more water after eating, and then go back to the study to study in a while. Man Bao, would you like to eat dinner at my house?" Man Bao remembered that there were still birds at home, and shook his head decisively. Lu Shi did not force it, and left with a smile. The two children watched her leave, then looked down at the roasted bird that had not finished eating, and slowed down decisively. They plan to eat a little longer, and there is only 1 left. The cook also looked at them speechlessly. The old lady just told her quietly, so that she would not have to make snacks for the two children in the afternoon, so as not to eat too much food. No matter how slow you eat, there will always be a moment when you finish eating. The two children sighed faintly, went to wash their hands and faces together, and then headed down to the study to read. Man Bao reached into the cloth bag, took out a medical book directly from Keek, and studied hard to take notes. This is how she studies medical books. First, she reads and understands it by herself, and then goes to the teaching room to listen to the lecture, and her understanding is faster and deeper. Bai Shanbao had become accustomed to it, and he also took out his book to read. After a long time, the two of them sighed together, full of treasure. "The meat is tender. Bai Shanbao, it's delicious." The two of them turned their heads and looked out the window together. What if they wanted to run out and continue catching birds at this time? But as soon as they looked down at the book in their hands, they still settled down and read the book. The husband said, "You can play at any time, but reading is not something you can do at any time, so you always have to do what you choose at the right time, and then do it at any time." Matter. Man Bao felt a little irritable in her heart, so she didn't take the words into her heart, but after rereading it twice, her heart gradually calmed down, and she could read it. Her reading efficiency gradually increased, and her page-turning speed gradually increased. Bai Shanbao is more difficult to enter into meditation than her, so he walked back and forth in the study with the book for a few times, and squatted by himself to play. Daji stood by and watched without making a sound. But as soon as Bai Shanbao looked up and saw Man Bao's serious face, he also lost the toy in his hand and picked up the book on the floor again to read. After going back and forth twice, he gradually calmed down. When Bai Erlang rushed into the study with the smell of meat, what he saw was that the two of them were occupying a corner by themselves, reading quietly. Hearing the sound of the door, the two of them looked up at him calmly, then pouted together and lowered their heads to read the book again. The excited Bai Erlang was unhappy and called out, "Why are you ignoring me? Bai Shanbao, didn't you see us reading? You came to us to read. What book are you reading? I just ate a delicious bird." "We know," Man Bao said without looking up, flipping a page of the book, "that's what we caught." "Bai Erlang, you are lying. Even he can't catch it, how can these two nerds catch it?" But neither Man Bao nor Bai Shanbao had the intention to argue with him. After saying a word, they both lowered their heads and read the book seriously. Bai Erlang couldn't tell the difference, and the study room was quiet for a while. Daji, who was sitting in the corner, gave Bai Erlang a sympathetic look. If he came 2 quarters early, or half an hour late, the scene might be lively. It happened when they entered the meditation and went deep into the book. Bai Erlang saw that the two were ignoring him, and couldn't help exhaling in anger. "You said you caught it, then you can catch another one and show it to me." Man Bao thought for a while and said, "I'll go home for dinner in a while, and I have to do my homework after dinner. I don't have time to catch it today, so let's do it tomorrow." Bai Shanbao also nodded, and his time was also very full. But Bai Erlang is idle. He neither wants to do homework nor read books. The sun is so bright at noon, so of course he is playing games and sleeping in the house. Now that the sun is not so hot, shouldn't he go out and play? However, he couldn't handle the two of them, so he walked around in the study and found that he still didn't like reading, so he ran out and decided to find his friends to play with. Just before running, he told the two of them, "You must ask me to go with you tomorrow, do you know?" The two nodded perfunctorily and continued to bury their heads in the book. After reading one chapter after another, Man Bao decided to go to the teaching room in the evening and order all the lessons that were previewed today. Bai Shanbao also closed his book with satisfaction, and decided that after finishing his homework, he could practice 2 characters. He would also be as good as everyone in calligraphy written in the book. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 302. The old Zhou family harvested the wheat very fast, but within 5 days, all the old Zhou family's wheat was collected. Fortunately, the old Zhou family has 2 yards this year. The ground is level and neat, and the picked wheat ears are spread in the yard to dry. It is enough for 2 days in such a big sun, plus it can always be in the ground for another half a day. Zhou Dalan and others continued to go down to the ground to cut the wheat, while he and Fang stayed at home to beat the wheat with the shackles. With a flick of the stick, the shackles circled in the air and landed on the ears of wheat, causing the grains of wheat to fall on the ground. Qian took the rest of the children and sat on the low stool with wooden sticks that were neither thick nor thin. When Zhou Dalan and the others came back from the field, they didn't need the help of a group of young, sick, and pregnant women at home. They tied their sleeves and picked up a handful of wheat ears that had been beaten twice. Kneading wheat is very hard, not only tiring, but also thorny. This kind of work has always been done by men in the old Zhou family. Fang Shi was not used to it as soon as she entered the door, because in her memory, this kind of work has always been done by women. Like her home. In addition to harvesting and picking wheat, her father and brother also killed sheep, so she and her mother-in-law had always done things like harvesting wheat, carrying water, cooking, and threshing wheat. Of course, Dad and Big Brother will help when they are free, but there are not many such things in her memory. She didn't quite understand why the old Joe family had to wait for the men to come back and rub it in the dark. But Mrs. he, who has been married to the old Joe family for many years, is used to it. Seeing Mrs. Fang looking at Chai Zuolang with a distressed face, she even pulled her and comforted her. It's okay, men are rough and fleshy, and the fourth child fights. It's okay, don't worry about him. The little Qian family just came back from the field. Everyone had already eaten dinner, but they hadn't washed up yet. She went directly into the kitchen to boil the water, and when it was hot, she called De Ya, tell your aunt and your younger brothers and sisters to come take a bath. After washing, hurry up and go to bed. Tomorrow we will go to cut beans, and you won't be needed. Big girl is happy. Xiao Qian continued, I'll go to wash clothes early in the morning. After I come back, I'll go to Zioan to peel off some vegetable leaves and come back to feed the chickens. If there are worms, remember to catch them. De Ye responded and happily went to fetch water to take a bath. After the children wash, it goes to the woman, and after the woman washes, it goes to the man. This is also a customary rule that is different from other homes. Mr. Fang didn't think there was anything in the past, but now this rule is very important when farming is busy. Because everyone is very tired and come back late, take a shower earlier and go to bed earlier. Of course, Mrs. Fang would not think that this rule was set by the father-in-law, so it can only be set by the mother-in-law. So when the men weren't around, Mrs. Fang couldn't help whispering to her auntie, mother-in-law is really amazing, the rules of the family are so clearly set. Feng and he nodded in agreement. However, Mrs. Jian burst into laughter and was about to say something, but she stopped talking when she saw Zhou 11 on the side. Zhou 11 only said, this rule is not set by my mother. Fang Shi blinked suspiciously, who decided that? Zhou 11 thought for a while, then smiled, no one has to make rules, but when you get used to it, it becomes a rule. Man Bao rushed in from the outside wearing a fragrant body and shouted, sister-in-law, Dad won't tell me to catch birds. Xiao Qian turned around and nodded her forehead, put the washed dishes and chopsticks away, and said, it's okay if you don't give it. How much wheat have you wasted these days? Obviously not much, Man Bao said, I use it repeatedly. That's also a handful, a handful. Dad was busy harvesting wheat and didn't care about you. Now that the wheat is finished, you can feed the birds with the wheat again. Don't you feel bad for your dead dad? Then you also eat birds, and you all say it's delicious. It's not like that when it's delicious, Xiao Qian said. Although the meat is delicious, the flour is more delicious and lasts longer, don't you think? And don't you go to school? You have to read and write your homework every day. Where's the time to catch the birds? It's time, just squeeze it. If only you thought that way when you were studying. Man Bao said with a serious face, I thought the same thing when I was studying. However, Mrs. Jian still did not let go, and was unwilling to persuade her father for her, so Man Bao sighed sadly. Regardless of her young age, she actually knew that persimmons were soft, so she dared to negotiate with the old Zhutu, dared to entangle with Xiao Qian to intercede, but did not dare to go to her mother. Man Bao sighed, and the next day he drooped his head to look for Bai Shanbao and Bai Erlang, and said, we can't catch birds anymore. Bai Erlang, who has been playing with them for the past 3 days, exclaimed, why? The voice was so loud that everyone in the school looked at him. Bai Erlang immediately lowered his voice and asked, why? Because my father doesn't bring me wheat anymore, Man Bao said, if you don't have wheat, you can't use it as bait to lure birds. Bai Shanbao pointed to Bai Erlang, his family has it. Bai Erlang was about to blurt out I have it in my family, but when Bai Shanbao said it first, he was not convinced and called out, "Don't you have it in your family?" "My family doesn't have it," Bai Shanbao said, "my family only has rice, and the wheat is far, far away. His family's land is not here. Mr. Bai has allocated a few acres of land nearby to his family, and asked his family to grow rice and other things, such as vegetables and fruits. Anyway, there is no shortage of food in their family. Even if the outside manager does not send it in, they can buy it with Master Bai, which is very convenient." It was only then that Bai Erlang remembered that Bai Shanbao's family's field was not here, and even the rice was only more than 1 mu, as if it were just a play. So Bai Erlang became proud again, raised his neck and said, "Don't worry, it's just wheat, my family has more." His family has a lot of land in Kilai village, a lot of land in Dali village, a lot of land in Bamagwan town, and a lot of land near the county seat. There is no shortage of wheat. So in the afternoon after school, Bai Erlang ran away, and within 2/4 of an hour, he came back with a servant. The servant was carrying a bundle of wheat on his shoulders, and Manbao and Bai Shanbao stared at it in astonishment. Manbao also rubbed his eyes, made sure he was not dazzled, then looked down at his homework, turned his head and said to Bai Shanbao, "Let's finish the homework first and then go play." In order to save time, they did not go to Bai's house to do their homework, nor did they go back to Zhou's house to do their homework, but sat in class and wrote. Bai Shanbao also withdrew his gaze, swallowed the word idiot, nodded and continued to do his homework. Daji, who was standing outside the class, lowered his head, his shoulders shook, and after a while, he raised his head with a serious face, but his eyes were a little wet. Bai Erlang had already rushed into the classroom and said, "Maize is here, let's go." Bai Shanbao said, "What about the fishing nets and sticks, weren't they placed in your house's concierge yesterday?" "That's right," Bai Erlang remembered, and asked the servant to put down the wheat, turned around and ran again, "Wait a minute, I'll get it right away." Bai Shanbao and Manbao looked at each other and continued to do their homework slowly with their heads down. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 303. When Manbao returned to Lao Zhou's house with a rope tied with 8 or 9 birds, the dinner was almost ready. As soon as Mr. He saw the bird in her hand, he took it naturally, and then he remembered and asked, "Didn't Dad let you touch the wheat ears?" Manbao said, "This is not from our house, it is the ear of wheat that Bai Erlang took from his house." He nodded and didn't care. When old Zhutu came back, he asked one more question, "Does Master Bai know?" Manbao thought that Bai Erlang had his servants carry a large bundle of wheat ears, so he nodded hesitantly and said, "I should know." Old Zhutu was relieved. Unlike their family, the Bai family had a lot of grain. Even if the disaster was not minor this time, the grain harvested was not comparable to them. Old Zhou took a piece of bird meat and said, "Hurry up and collect all the beans in the field, Master Bai's family is looking for someone to work for 3 more days, the 3rd child, you will take the 4th child to the Master Bai's house to pick it up." Workers, the eldest stayed at home to farm wheat and beans, and the 2nd continued to go to the city to sell vegetables. Several brothers should be under. Originally, Lao Zhutu didn't plan to let his sons go to Master Bai's house to work part-time jobs again this year, because the family had an extra piece of land from Shizalang, and he couldn't spare that much time. However, after the disaster this year, the work is not enough. Since the work at home is done quickly, of course, I have to take a part-time job. In fact, there are many people who think the same way as old Zhutu, so when Zhaosan Lang finally led Shai Zuolang to Bai's house, he found that there were a lot of people looking for work. But they also have advantages. Wednesday Lang was a competent person who wrote down his name from the steward of the Bai family, and he was also from the village, so the steward of the Bai family accepted it as soon as he saw it, and the salary was slightly lower than that of previous years by 2 cents. No way, after the disaster, even when farming is busy, labor is very cheap. If Master Bai was not cautious enough, he would only use the acquaintances he had used in previous years. He only served 3 meals a day, and he could attract a lot of people with a wave of his hand in the county town. Butler Bai accepted Zhou Lang without hesitation. When it was Zhou Lang's turn, he struggled a bit, and finally accepted it with a frown. This steward lives in Qilai village with Master Bai, and mainly manages the fields of Qilai village and Dali village. Naturally, he knows that his little Lang Jun and Zhou's little lady are very close, and they have been playing together every day recently. Forget it, don't look at the monk's face and look at the Buddha's face. The steward reluctantly accepted Zhou Lang, but still told Zhou Lang, Wednesday, you have to watch your brother a little bit. Wednesday Lang hurriedly bent down to answer, and Thursday Lang also grinned and assured that he would work diligently. The steward waved his hand and asked for 2 sickles to be brought to them, then left. Thursday Lang sighed with the sickle, my old waist. Wednesday looked at him. Thursday Lang hurriedly said, third brother, don't worry, I will not be lazy, don't complain to dad. Zhou Lang retracted his gaze and said, let's go to the field. The Bai family's wheat has not been harvested yet. The land in other parts of Master Bai's house either has a zhuangzi, which is cultivated by servants, or the land is mainly leased to tenants, and zhuangzi is also set up to manage. Only the fields of Qilai village and Dali village are close by, and Master Bai is more attentive. Therefore, in addition to the 20 long-term workers and 10 or so servants, he prefers to hire nearby villagers to do short-term labor. It is precisely because of this that Master Bai was able to quickly integrate into the local villagers in the first 2 years of moving to Qilai village. Not only in Qilai village, but also in Dali village has great prestige. After all, when farming is busy, everyone can rely on him to make money, and when farming is slack, everyone can still rely on him to make money, right? Country people are simple, and they are always more grateful to the owners who can provide them with food and clothing. For this reason, whether planting or harvesting in this area of his family will always be a little slower than that of others. Mr. Bai doesn't like to grow beans. Compared with beans, wheat that can be ground into flour is naturally more delicious. Therefore, most of the dry land in Mr. Bai's house is grown with wheat. They went to the village from afar, and there is still a large area left unfinished, and the beans can be harvested when they are finished. In fact, Shiro prefers to cut beans. He yawned, and resignedly followed the third brother's ass to cut the wheat, and only rested for an hour at noon. Although the 3 meals a day that the Bai family is responsible for is good, such a workload, which is done under the sun, still makes Thursday Lang miserable. As soon as he was in pain, he couldn't help but want to fish, because it wasn't his own home anyway. Thursday Lang's movements became slower and slower, and then he heard a rustling voice behind him, his body couldn't help but froze, and he immediately cut it up hard. After a while, when he heard that there was no movement behind him, he couldn't bear it. Live and look back. I saw a very familiar little kid not far away, instructing a servant to pile up several piles of wheat they had cut, and then tie it up and carry it away. Thursday Lang couldn't help but ask, is Xiao Lang also going to the ground to help harvest the wheat? Master Bai is actually willing to use his precious little son? Bai Erlang turned his head to look at him, and it took a long time before he recognized the dark man as Man Bao's 4th brother, so he grinned, no, I'm going to catch sparrows with Bai Shan's human, and we need wheat as bait. This time, not only was Chu Hulang silent, but Chu Yulang couldn't help but look back. Seeing that the servant had already carried the sheaf of wheat, he couldn't help but say, will it be too much? Not at all, the more you sprinkle, the more birds will fly down, Bai Erlang said confidently, we've caught too hard during this time, and it's not easy to catch any more birds at the entrance of the village. The sparrow is gone, so I can only come here to catch it. Thursday Lang didn't understand very well, is there a shortage of meat in Xiao Lang's family? No shortage, why do you ask that? Since there is no shortage of meat, why do you have to catch birds? Because it's fun. Bai Erlang had eaten birds for several days, even if he changed his taste, he would be tired of it. And the reason why he likes to go to the field to carry wheat ears every day is because catching birds is fun. So far, he has gathered a lot of friends to play this game together. Yes, Bai Erlang has gathered a lot of friends, so that every time Man Bao and Bai Shanbao are not present, they can do well. Of course, in order to eat meat, Man Bao still arrives every day, but he will bring his own books. Bai Shanbao thinks that the snacks made from fried or barbecued bird sparrows are also very good, so he will also follow, and also bring his own book. Because there is only one set of fishing nets, they can't get the job of pulling the rope, and of course, the job of digging holes and burying sticks is even more out of their reach. So they sat under a tree and read a book, occasionally giving them pointers on how to position themselves. Of course, when Bai Erlang arrives, he will take over the command forcefully and won't let others interfere. Bai Shanbao and Manbao are tired of playing this game, so naturally they don't care. If he wants to command, he will give it to him, and because of this, Manbao and Bai Shanbao can get the same price as Bai Er when they divide the birds every day. The number, euphemistically called, is the offering to the elders. Well, elder. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 304. Master Bai came to inspect the fields at sunset. After all, when the sun was too hot, he didn't really want to go out. The wheat from other manors had already been harvested, and today he was able to take care of the fields near his home. As a result, he walked around the ridge with his hands behind his back for a while, when he heard the exclamations and cheers of children not far away. He couldn't help but look over curiously. It was a field of about 3 or 4 minutes, and because there were 2 trees and some rocks, it was a field. Grass grows naturally in the wild, and Master Bai is very familiar with it, because when he is planting in the spring and harvesting in the autumn, he will always sit there when he comes to inspect the fields. At this time, there were 7 or 8 children gathered there, and the fat boy surrounded by them was very familiar. Master Bai signaled his entourage to keep quiet, and walked forward with his hands behind his back. When they got closer, they found that they were propping up the net from the ground, and someone was catching a bird and stuffing it into the basket. Master Bai remembered the birds that he could find in these days. Of course he knew that it was his younger son who caught it, and he was very relieved. After all, he was so old, and he always took things out, and rarely brought things home. Master Bai smiled and was about to go up to greet his son's friends in an amiable manner, when he saw that the children had set up a net, and his son turned around and picked up a bunch of wheat from somewhere, and threw it on the grass. Superior. Master Bai was stunned and looked at the ground, only to realize that there was originally a layer of wheat ears on the grass, but now there is another layer, which looks even more. Man Bao looked up at the time, stood up from under the tree and said, Bai Er, we'll go home after one more time. It's getting late. Bai Er was unwilling, it's still early, why go back so early? It's almost time for dinner, and you're not doing your homework. Bai Shanbao also took the book and stood up, saying, your homework has been approved by your husband for 3 consecutive days. Bai Er was a little unhappy, would you mind copying your homework earlier? The content of our class is different from yours, and the homework is also different, okay. Then copy me your previous homework. Master Bai was mad, he turned left and right to find the stick, the steward behind him was startled, immediately hugged Master Bai, and shouted, second young master. Bai Er turned his head to look and met his father's red eyes. He had no idea what his father was angry with, but subconsciously knew that things were not good, so he let out an ow and ran home. He knew that it was only useful to find his grandmother at this time. Master Bai was so angry that he struggled to break free from the shackles of the manager, and roared, "Let me go, I have to kill this stinky boy today." It's fine for him to use wheat as sand, but he dares to perfunctory his studies. The steward persuaded again and again, "Master, it hurts your heart to beat your body. Isn't this just a bundle of wheat, and our family is not short of this wheat?" This is also true. Master Bai is mainly angry that Bai didn't do his homework well. However, Man Bao felt that it was wrong to be in charge. In her opinion, wheat is more important than homework, but Bai is her little friend, so she is very serious for him to tell the difference. "Uncle Bai, we didn't waste food very much, either. When we close the net, these ears of wheat have to be picked up and put back, except for the ones eaten by birds and those accidentally dropped on the ground, we didn't waste any of them." What Master Bai was reading was the book they were holding, and he almost burst into tears. He stretched out his hand to hold the two children and said, "If he is half as sensible as you, and knows how to read carefully, I will not regret even if he scatters 10 sheaves of wheat every day." Man Bao opened his mouth wide and praised sincerely, "Uncle Bai, you are so generous. Much more generous than her father." Master Bai's anger came and went quickly, mainly because Bai Erlang was not in front of him, so he couldn't get angry, so he set his eyes on the basket. The children were very obedient, and they stopped netting the birds. They directly divided the birds inside, and then bundled the wheat ears scattered on the ground, and went back to their respective homes. Because he was caught by the adults, Master Bai got the most birds, Man Bao and Bai Shanbao got 5 each, and the other little friends got 4. Because they knew that Mai Sui belonged to Bai Erlang's family, Wang belonged to Bai Shanbao's family, and the method was thought by Man Bao and Bai Shanbao, and this was really a very fun game. Unfortunately, there may be no chance to play in the future. Master Bai went home with a bunch of birds, intending to beat the child after dinner. As a result, when they arrived at the entrance of the village, they heard the gong beating loudly in the village. This is the sound of the gong that the village chief informs each family to hold a meeting under the big banyan tree at the entrance of the village after dinner. Master Bai frowned and asked, "What happened in the village?" Man Bao had already run to the house with the bird in his hand, and Bai Shanbao hurriedly caught up, but he didn't have time to answer Master Bai. Man Bao ran home in one breath. Old Zhutu and the others had just come back from the field. The family was making beans in the yard, smiling. "Dad, I heard the gong." Old Zhou glanced at the bird in her hand, and said with an long came when it rang, saying that the county magistrate summoned all the Li to enter the city to notify that the official document for tax exemption this year has come down. Man Bao heaved a sigh of relief, then wondered, "We all know it's been 10 days, why did you just inform?" Old Zhutu was used to it, "That's because Mr. Zhuang is well informed, and our family has taken advantage of this." Man Bao immediately said, "Dad, do you want to kill a chicken tonight to celebrate?" "Don't even think about it, haven't you already celebrated?" Lao Zhutu thought of something, and nodded with a smile, "It is indeed time to celebrate, then I will burn the birds you brought back tonight, anyway, it is a meat dishes, a few more eggs would be good." Crowd. Man Bao learned the reason for beating the gong, Bai Shanbao knew it, Bai Shanbao knew it, and so did Master Bai. Master White. He simply didn't go home, handed the string of birds to the steward to carry home, turned around and went to the school next to him to find Mr. Zhuang. He was a little displeased. "It's been 10 days since I received the news, and the county's official documents have been posted for 5 or 6 days. As a result, the decree arrived in the village today. What is Magistrate Fu doing?" Mr. Zhuang smiled indifferently and said, "No matter what he does, he also has a share of the credit for the tax exemption, and the people are really benefiting from the benefits, right? Master Bai snorted, and after thinking for a moment, said, I received news that Lord Wei appreciates Fu County Magistrate very much, and Fu County Magistrate may be promoted to a higher level soon. Mr. Zhuang couldn't help but feel a little worried when he cooked tea. I don't know what kind of person the new county magistrate is. In fact, as long as they don't encounter particularly greedy and cruel officials, the people under the rule are the least likely to change the magistrate. Because the new officials took office 3 fires, most of the fire could not burn the people, but there were always sparks that splashed down. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 305. But this kind of thing is not something that Master Bai, let alone Mr. Zhuang, can control, so they only talked about it, and then talked about this year's harvest. Master Bai has really suffered heavy losses this year. He was in a bad mood at first. Today, seeing his little son so muddled, his mood is even worse. He asked 2 questions about Bai Erlang's homework, and then turned to talk about Bai Dalan with Mr. Zhuang. Bai Dalan was Mr. Zhuang's first group of students. Now people are studying in the Mianzhou government school. At that time, Mr. Zhuang also contributed. Of course, he just introduced people to Master Bai, and it is Master Bai's business how to put people into the school. Compared with Bai Erlang, Bai Dalan is a diligent and studious person, and he is also smarter. However, Master Bai felt that his eldest son was inferior to his nephew Bai Shan, so he asked Mr. Zhuang, Sir, do you think Shanbao will go to the county school first like Dalan, and then go to the prefectural school, or go directly to the school? School is better. This means to start planning for Bai Shan. After pondering for a moment, Mr. Zhuang said, that kid is smart, but he is high-spirited and rebellious. It's better to stay in the countryside to polish his temperament. When he is older, it would be better for him to go directly to the examination. Mr. Zhuang smiled and said, although Mianzhou Prefectural School is good, it is far inferior to Yizhu Prefectural School. Master Bai's eyes brightened, he straightened his back subconsciously, and asked, can Shanbao go directly to the Yizhu Prefectural School? Mr. Zhuang smiled and said, with his talent, as long as he doesn't take the wrong road in the next 5 years, it won't be difficult. Master Bai became excited, no longer angry with his younger son, and laughed happily. When I went back in the evening, I saw the trembling little son. He patted his head kindly and said, you can play if you want. Go play with Shanbao and Manbao more, but you are not allowed to disturb them when they are reading. Do you know? Bai Erlang nodded ignorantly, and then didn't sleep well all night. The next day he wore dark circles under his eyes and said to his 2 friends, it was so painful, I didn't dare close my eyes when I was sleeping, for fear that my father would rush in and beat me while I was sleeping, and I would wake up in the middle of the night. Twice, alas. Manbao and Bai Shanbao looked at him with contempt. Does your father have to choose when you fall asleep when he beats you? Bai Shanbao also nodded, uncle is not so boring, he reached out to grab you, can you run away? Bai Erlang thought for a while, then shook his head and said, I can't run away, but why didn't my father beat me yesterday? Manbao guessed, because it hurts you. Father's love is reluctant. Her father was reluctant to beat her. Bai Shanbao was a bystander, and said, maybe it's because I think you have no cure. Bai Erlang puffed out his cheeks, snorted and turned away. Manbao and Bai Shanbao looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, a jingle rang in Manbao's mind, and Keek broadcast a message, the entry of Poria is completed, the host will be rewarded with 200,000 points, the entry of the tree sparrow will be rewarded with 200,000 points, and it is found that the host is unknown. Bird species, the entry needs to be determined by the Research Institute, and 10,000 points will be awarded first. Before Manbao could be surprised, Keek continued, as determined by the Supreme Court of the Alliance, it is agreed that the major research institutes will be connected to the encyclopedia, and the channels of each world and alliance will be opened, and the forum will be opened. During the period, the owners of each system and the alliance will generate the transaction, transportation, and maintenance costs are borne by the major research institutes, and the transactions between the worlds are equally shared by the owners of the systems. Do the hosts want to open a second channel for the forum? Man Bao, she understood in the front, but didn't understand in the back. Seeing that her eyes were confused, Keek knew where the host didn't understand. There was no way, the host was so bad when he was young, so he could only introduce it in more detail. Of course, it was introduced after calling out the forum. A dark interface appeared in Man Bao's mind. Before she could ask what it was, red, green and green words suddenly appeared on the interface. There are all kinds of characters, and in the next moment, these characters all become familiar Chinese characters, and the first line is, "I want to buy a fiction summary of the 21st century of the Earth era." Man Bao clicked it subconsciously, and saw a lot of words pop up in an instant. What's the use of that thing? For those who study ancient literature, it is said that only people who are full and have nothing to do will study this kind of thing. Can it be eaten as a meal? The resources are already lacking, and they are still used to buy this kind of thing. A group of mentally retarded, do they think that life is all about eating and drinking? Can people without spiritual civilization still be called people? I want to find an introduction to one of the greatest works of the 21st century, Lin's Ronghua in that book. It's a pity that no one listened to what he was talking about, because the floors were superimposed quickly, and Man Bao couldn't see the information on it in a while. She withdrew, looked at the red, green, and green texts that were constantly being refreshed on the interface, and asked, "Is it possible that I can just sell them the things I get in the future?" No, there are new species that are still being included in the encyclopedia. After the encyclopedia is included, a task will be released, and the research institutes that have been drawn by lot will conduct research on the species, Keek said, but there are also some institutes or researchers who see the target object very quickly. If they are interested, but they don't get it, they can contact the host here on the forum and trade, and the encyclopedia of points for the transaction will take a part, and I will also get a part of the commission, and the rest is for the host. Keek is very detailed in this regard, because it is impossible to expand the types of species recorded with the current ability of the host, so their income mainly depends on the quantity, and they are maintained by the animals and plants that have been collected. The host only needs to provide the encyclopedia with a collection of targets. In the past, if the encyclopedia did not research an entry, the host needed to add a target. This extra target is almost unpaid, but now there are if a target object is not enough, if they want to study again, they can only contact the host and buy points from the host. Man Bao's eyes were sparkling, and he asked, "Are there many points?" "I don't know, because the forum has just started, this is a free market, and many objects are unique, so there is no fixed price, but I don't think it will be too low, but it will not be higher than the encyclopedia." Integral. Because the price given by the encyclopedia is the most fair, it has the main system to calculate the value of the target. Unless there are special circumstances, there will be no research institute or researcher who will offer a higher price than the encyclopedia. However, Man Bao quickly saw a subtitle flashing on the interface, and the alarm bell rang in his heart. "I just saw that there is a plan for purchase. What if other system hosts also have something I included?" "No," Keek said with certainty, "there won't be two identical systems for recording creatures, so even if other hosts have something like that, he won't be able to trade it out, for the security of the system and to protect the system. The main system has formulated strict regulations for the forum." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yuzu. Chapter 306. Mr. Zhuang walked down the podium with the book, and reached out and tapped on the table in front of Man Bao. Man Bao's consciousness immediately came out of the system, and he picked up the textbook dumbfounded. Keek also shut up and waited for her to finish class. It was not until lunchtime that Man Bao found a gap and Keek continued to study the newly opened forum. The policy that needs to be determined by the Supreme Court of the Union is of course not as simple as opening a forum. In fact, the forum is only one aspect derived from this policy, but it is only this aspect related to the host and it. Although only a very small aspect, the alliance and the main system also have strict rules and regulations. For example, the research institutes and researchers who can go to the forum are strictly controlled. Not everyone can go to this forum. Without the corresponding research qualifications, they simply cannot pass the audit of the main system. Therefore, the objects they trade with are very limited. Of course, this is compared to the alliance's more than 30 billion intelligent creatures. For Keek and Manbao, this number is quite large, mainly because of competition and market freedom. Enough, good for them. The second is restrictions on transactions. The alliance and the main system prohibit organizations or individuals in the forum from sending technological products far beyond their planes to other worlds, which is stricter than the rules of the mall. After all, in the mall, as long as they can afford the technology tax, they can buy things, but not in the forum. Similarly, because the forum is still mainly based on research, there are strict restrictions on the number of transactions, which is to prevent future intelligent creatures from plundering materials from other worlds. Finally, the second channel of the forum. The forum is divided into two parts. The second part is the exchange and transactions of various worlds. Manbao also saw that interface. It may be because the forum is newly opened, the hosts of each world are very quiet, only one person with the label 10 sent a message, "Do you need all kinds of antiques?" The old man is not deceiving. Manbao poked on it, thought about it and replied, "Antiques can't be eaten." The interface appeared instantly, and she became happy and asked, "Keek, can't I chat with many people anytime, anywhere?" "That's right." Manbao got excited and asked, "What happened to the second channel of the forum you just said?" The second channel needs to be opened by the host itself, so that items can be traded in various worlds. Otherwise, it only has the reply function, and the host can't even post. Manbao was very familiar with this method, so he asked, "How many points are needed?" 5 million. Manbao. Keek said, "It's worth the money, but I think this burden is too heavy for the host. You have 490,000 points now, and another 500,000 can buy medicine for your mother, so it is recommended that the host temporarily disable this function. If the previous host, or something else, Keek will definitely encourage the other party to open the channel, which is only good for it, not bad, because as long as it is a transaction in the forum, it needs to be maintained, and it needs to be maintained. Get commission." But who made Manbao so weak? Manbao complained in a low voice, "It's so expensive." "It's not expensive at all," Keek explained in a low voice. "In the second channel, the host can trade a lot of things with various worlds, and it's not limited to the things we have included. This kind of convenience is not available in the first channel." Manbao was curious, why do they restrict the first channel but not the second channel? The data in Keek's chip flowed quickly, and after a while, he said, "A road that has not been traveled, no one knows what is ahead. In the dark, everyone can only cautiously explore forward, but if there are countless people next door intertwined paths, and you know, these paths will not intersect with the main road you are going to walk, do you worry about people on the trails falling or flying?" Manbao hesitantly said, "Yes, can't we help you when we fall? But the people who pass these bills obviously don't think that way." Manbao looked ignorant, "What does walking have to do with the bill?" Keek did not explain too much, because the main system of this bill is the executor, and as the subsystems under the control of the main system, they are of course listening to the main system. Manbao already knew that Keek was not completely free, and he could say whatever he wanted. So it didn't say anything, and Manbao didn't ask any further. It is impossible for the current Manbao to spend 500,000 points to open a channel, so she quickly switched to the first channel, watching with interest the people above all begging and selling. Then she went to look at what she had recorded, what she could trade. She used to look at the item with the highest click rate first, thinking that the higher the click rate, the more popular it should be, and the more people should buy it. Manbao wrote down a few important entries, and then went to the forum to search to see if anyone wanted to buy what she included. Then found none. Manbao's eyes widened innocently, and Keek coughed lightly. "Host, we are still weak now, take your time." That's why he doesn't recommend the host to open the second channel now. He can't even open the first channel for free, and spending so much money to open the second channel is too expensive and people are too stupid. Manbao lowered his head in despair, and found that he was looking for a variety of things on the forum. Some were looking for books, some were looking for some unheard of plants, and some were looking for medicines. Keek said, "The host of each world can only trade the plants that have been included in the first channel of the forum through the system. For example, the host, you can only trade the plants and animals that you have already included. The world of Manbao is very old, and the integrity of the books is also very high, but she can only read the books in the system, and Keek can't include them, and they can't include them. Therefore, it cannot be traded in the first channel. But if people in the second channel need it, after Manbao is opened, they can be traded to people in that world." It took Manbao an afternoon nap and an hour in the evening to figure out these rules, and then for the sake of points, she started trying to post on the forum. What can she come up with? They didn't catch birds today, and they probably won't be able to do so in the future, so it's impossible for birds. Poria has also been sold out. At present, no one in the family has time to bring Manbao up the mountain. The yam is not yet mature, and the privet is still green, but the azalea and wisteria on the mountain are still in bloom, and they are still looking good. These flowers bloomed, thanked, and bloomed again. Although they couldn't be kept for a long time after they were picked, they still look good when planted in the garden. Moreover, compared with food, such as poria, which can be exchanged for money, Manbao prefers to trade things that can neither be eaten nor exchanged for money. So Manbao edited a title, "I have beautiful and beautiful ancient flower varieties of wisteria and azalea, do you want them?" The title is like this, and the text is two sets of pictures, both taken from Keek. When they were discovered, Keek scanned and saved them. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 307. Most of the posts on the interface are asking for purchases, and people like Manbao are the first to directly ask for sale, so someone quickly clicks in. Researchers who are not in their own research direction just glance at it and don't read it, but there are also many researchers who study biology, or who want to make a profit from it. Manbao went to check the original reward points for wisteria and azalea, and after discussing it with Keek, he replied, "The same as 300 points, I will dig a little soil for you to do cultivation research." 300 points is not too low for the full treasure who has saved 1 point and 1 point. After all, the encyclopedia was only willing to give her 380 points. But for the researchers who can access the forum, 300 points are not enough for them to have a meal in a high-end restaurant, even if the channel fee for the alliance is added. So if you are interested, you can place an order without hesitation. And there are still a lot of people who have placed orders. Keek quickly remembered that 7 or 8 orders appeared in Keek's backstage. Manbao took a look and found that everyone ordered both, and they all ordered 3 copies. In this way, she would earn nearly 20,000 points at a time. This is simply more than she can earn by working so hard to find new breeds. However, the money is temporarily placed in the main system, and she can receive the money only after the delivery is verified by the other party. With so many azaleas and wisterias, Man Bao could not dig alone, so she decided to ask her nephews and nieces for help. Datu and the others were also catching birds recently, and of course they couldn't get the ears of wheat from home, so they went to the field to pick them up. They have plenty of time. They work at home in the morning, pick up wheat ears in the morning, and go to the nets in the afternoon. If they find a lot, they take some home, and if they don't, they bake it on the spot. While it may taste better than not at home, they just feel delicious. There are many children, even young people, who do this in the village. Since Manbao and the others were able to catch birds with nets, there are more people in the village who can catch birds. As long as they are willing to bait and have patience, they can basically catch one or two. Therefore, recently, the birds in Qilai village have suffered a serious crime. Looking at Manbao, the number of birds surrounding the fields at the entrance of the village has decreased a lot. Because of this, they either go very far to catch birds, or they can't catch them. Although the children of the old Zhou family are bold, but the family is strictly controlled, they cannot run far away, so they can only watch the little friends in the village run away, and they can only continue to occupy the village not far from the entrance. Place traps to lure birds. So as soon as my sister-in-law came up, she agreed without thinking. Anyway, they rarely catch birds, so it's better to go up the mountain to help my aunt dig something. Manbao went up the mountain with them. Azalea is a big plant, and it is impossible for Manbao to dig down the whole tree. Fortunately, there are many vines that can be cut, so she prunes the branches directly. He took a handful of soil from its roots, wrapped the branches and soil with large leaves, and then grabbed a weed and tied it up. Wisteria is easier, this thing is more likely to survive cuttings, but it is hard branches that need to be cut, and Manbao is also generous to pack 2 branches, and also send a portion of soil. Sometimes I still need to look for it, but there are a lot of wisteria on the mountain, and at this time there are still flowers in bloom, and they are cutting them. Because they are pruning branches, these 2 plants are not difficult to find as long as they reach the mountain. After all, whether it is wisteria or azalea, they like to grow piece by piece. And when they were pruning, there were 2 more orders in the background. Keek simply suggested that Manbao prune a little more and temporarily store it in the system. Generally speaking, this thing should be stored for 3 or 5 days, as long as you pay attention to maintaining humidity it's fine. So a group of children cut about 30 copies at a stretch, until they had cut off the 2 good branches of wisteria and azalea on the mountain, and then put the things in the backpack and carried them home. Of course, the basket was carried by Datu and Daya, while Manbao and Arya and the others followed hand in hand. They asked Manbao curiously, "Little aunt, can this thing be sold?" Manbao nodded affirmatively, "Yes." The big head said, "It's a fool who buys things. There are many wildflowers in the mountains. There are none on the mountains in front of our house, and we have to come here." When they got here, they all walked halfway to the county seat, and they were really exhausted. "That's also wild grass and wildflowers," Ertu said. "Listen to my father, there are a lot of these wildflowers on the mountains that pass through the mountains. If you like it, auntie, I will ask my father to give it to you when the farming is slack. Pick. Wait for the idle flowers, thank you. Should dig a little and go home." Data disliked several younger brothers and sisters who always strayed from the topic, so he went to the aunt and continued his own question, "Who is so stupid to buy these things?" Manbao thought for a while and said, "Some very powerful people." Keek said that those who can enter the forum to trade with them are either the administrators of the institute with a lot of money and power, or they have read a lot of books and are very good researchers who can specialize in one or more fields. So Manbao thinks they are all very powerful people. When something is in their hands, It can take at least a day or two to as long as a month or two, and they can research the purpose of the thing, cultivate Fang's family, and even have some medicinal value. Keek said that those entries usually contain less than 1,000th of the information, and the real secrets are kept in the hands of research institutes or researchers, and they will make profits and benefit the entire interstellar space. She felt that it would be great to be able to study the medicinal value of tuckahoe without knowing it, and they are still studying and cultivating tuckahoe. You must know that the Poria cocos that Manbeo and Shizalang secretly left behind wanted to breed, but they were either dried out by the sun or so rotten that they wanted to faint when they smelled it. Alas, so this kind of thing still depends on them. Data didn't understand, why do powerful people buy wildflowers? All the mountains are. The value of goods is not measured in this way, Manbao said. When it rains, delicious mushrooms will grow on the mountain. Everyone knows that you can find mushrooms when you go up the mountain, but people in the city will still spend 30 cents. 20 pennies were bought from the second brother. If you were a villager, would you buy it? Big Head shook his head. Just go up the mountain to find it. If you can't find it, don't eat it. Those who can buy mushrooms are not necessarily talented, but they must be rich, and those who can make money at least show that he is powerful, right? Big Head nods. So we don't need to care who buys wildflowers and weeds from us, and we don't need to care whether he is strong or stupid, and we don't care what they do with the things. If they want to buy them, we just sell them. Then how do you calculate the money? Datu asked. Little ant, you have gone to school. What if there is still such a business, or should we help you? Manbao laughed and said happily, okay, I will give you a piece of candy in the future, you can save the candy and take it to the county town to sell it. Why sugar, not money? Because I don't have money, people don't give me money. Points cannot be directly exchanged for money, but can be exchanged for sugar. Of course, it is better to give sugar. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 308. Data didn't ask what the guest exchanged with the ant. Hearing this answer, he felt normal. That's it, who would pay for such a thing? Manbeo handed over the things to Keek, and Keek sent the goods out one by one. In the afternoon, and in the evening, all the points were credited, a total of 25,800 points, and Keek took a percentage of the points. 10th, after it consciously deducts its own points, the rest of Manbeo's account is its own points. Manbao happily looked at the points that passed the 500,000 mark and became happy. This is the most points she has had since Keek. She clenched her fists and thought ambitiously that if two species as precious as tree sparrows appeared, she would be able to buy medicine for her mother. Keek reminded, host, you still have a target that has not been settled. Visually, its reward points will not be lower than the tree sparrow. Manbao was even happier, so I just need to find another species. No, it would be enough to sell wisteria and azaleas 20 times like this time. It's good, but it seems that not many people are buying it. After all, they are all about research and cultivation. Those who are engaged in science and technology only need to get a few branches and then get some breeding soil for research. Large-scale cultivation with future technology will not be a problem. Not everyone is a biologist, and not every biologist will be interested in these two kinds of flowers. Keek feels that the host can trade more species. Perhaps you can list the listed species that you can get now and throw it on the list. If someone wants it, they will naturally place an order with you. Manbao thought this idea was a good idea. She first logged out of the system, glanced outside, then surreptitiously lit an oil lamp, took out a piece of paper and began to write and draw. Keek can help her upload and find pictures for her, but she can't post and summarize them for her. The humans who designed them thought this would make humans insane. So Manbao can only come by himself. There are only 2 oil lamps in the entire Laozhou family, one is in the hands of Laozhou, and the other is naturally in the hands of Manbao, the only scholar at home. It has been more than 3 years, and there are quite a few creatures in Manbao, the most of which are plants. She first eliminated those reward points with only 1 point. She already knew that this kind of points means that there will be some in the future. And still young. So she only looks for things with more than 10 points. It would be better if she could reach 100 points. Among them, the best-looking plants, such as Centella asiatica, thorns, and cabbage caterpillars, are the easiest to obtain, and the best creatures regardless of the season. After Manbao made the list, he scanned it for Keek, and then she got it in the forum, and a long post was done. All treasures are marked as ancient, and she knows that the more ancient things are, the more valuable they are. The Shenbao family has a shelf with many treasures, and there are many treasures on it. Some of them were handed down hundreds of years ago, but they are valuable. Moreover, there are a lot of people in the forum who are looking for books and antiques from ancient times. Manbao has always been good at finding and summarizing these things. After posting the post, Manbao blew out the oil lamp and lay on the bed. When she woke up the next morning, she didn't get up immediately to wash and eat breakfast, but read the post in the advanced system. Then I found out that her post was gone. The interface was colorful, but without her post, Manbao was stunned. Keek said, "There are too many people posting, and it has sunk to the bottom. Do you want to send it again? It's too troublesome, and the same post is posted so many times, the encyclopedia will ban it." Then what? Keek said, "The host can consider buying the homepage, so that you can always appear on the homepage interface, and anyone who enters the forum must see your post first." How many points? 10 points a day. Manbao felt it was too expensive and asked instead, "Do we have an order?" Keek said solemnly, "No. Forget it, I'll post it myself." Manbao thought for a while and said, "It must be because it was too late last night and everyone slept, so they didn't see it. I decided to post it again in Shenzhen, at that time. There should be a lot of people on the forum." Keek looked at the confident host and told her solemnly, "No, there are the fewest talents on the forum at the right time, but last night when the host posted a post, it was the peak of traffic." Manbao was a little unconvinced. "They don't sleep at night? Besides, Chen Zheng and I have already finished my morning class. People are at their most energetic. How can Keek tell her that the nights in the future will be as bright as day, so 9 o'clock in the evening is just the beginning of the nightlife, and at 8 in the morning, there may be a large number of people who haven't woken up. The forum has just started, and there are still many world hosts who haven't responded, but at this time, the needs of research institutes and researchers are the greatest. Our target points are not high, and it is a good test process," Keek said, "so, if our target is really popular, the biggest possibility is these 2 days. I think it is necessary for the host to increase the exposure in these 2 days. Anyway, it only takes 2 days, 20 points." Manbao glanced at his account, trying hard not to let himself think that 20 points is 20 bags of candy, which can be exchanged for at least 1,000 pennies to 2,000 pennies. In the end, Manbao nodded, "Okay, I'll listen to you." Manbao was a little out of his mind all morning. While reading a book, he couldn't help but immerse himself in the system to see if there was an order coming in the background. Bai Shanbao looked at her again and again, and after she was distracted again, he couldn't help but bumped her elbow and asked, "What's the matter with you?" Manbao recovered and shook his head. Bai Shanbao didn't believe it, and asked, "Did something happen to your family?" Manbao continued to shake his head and wanted to ask him why he thought so, but Bai Shanbao said, "Since it's not an accident, why do you keep getting distracted? Today, Mr. is going to start a new class." Manbao came back to her senses with a jolt, and cried out oops in her heart. She forgot to preview yesterday. Bai Shanbao understood at a glance. He couldn't help laughing out loud. He looked left and right, and seeing that no one was paying attention, he lent her his notes and whispered, "I previewed the notes I made yesterday, hurry up. Look." Man Bao glanced at him gratefully, immediately took out the textbook and read it through twice, marked the words that were not familiar to him, and asked Bai Shanbao if he couldn't recognize them. The definition is basically recognized. Of course, before that, Man Bao asked Keek to turn off the sound, and she decided not to go to the backstage of the system until the get out of class ended. The ancient book, no, it is right that later generations say that those who disturb my heart are more troubled today, so in order to be more stable today, it is better to let those who disturb my heart not appear. After all, today is the day of a new class. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 309. Man Bao studied hard, read the new text back and forth 4 or 5 times, and read Bai Shanbao's notes twice, and then closed his eyes and recited silently. When the morning class was over, Mr. Zhuang walked into the class with the book. Man Bao quietly breathed a sigh of relief, then turned his head to look at Bai Shanbao and pursed his lips and smiled. Mr. Zhuang saw it above, glanced at the things on the desks of the 2 children, and did not order the 2 favorite students to answer questions after the whole class. This made the backs of the classmates sitting behind Man Bao tense, and they were almost dripping with cold sweat after a class. I always feel that Mr. Today's question is super difficult, and there is a kind of meaning aimed at them. Is it because they have been naughty recently? The classmates behind them are doubting themselves, while the ambitious Bai Shanbao and Man Bao are gradually disappointed. Especially Man Bao, she worked hard to preview the whole morning class and was ready to answer a lot of questions, but the husband didn't ask any questions, so disappointed. After school at noon, Man Bao didn't go to the backstage of the system, and Keek didn't make a sound. She endured it until after school in the afternoon before she let her consciousness enter the backstage of the system to see the situation. Only then did Keek appear. There is an order. It sorted the orders and showed them to Man Bao, and the first place was the cabbage caterpillar. Man Bao was stunned. Why do they like bugs? Looking at the comments on the forum, I'm glad what gene is in the cabbage worm, and after changing it, it can become a good feed for carnivores. Feed the chickens. Chickens like to eat bugs. No, it's more about feeding the bicorn, which has good meat and is more delicious than chicken, but it's a carnivore and has a very picky mouth. As soon as I mentioned the full treasure, I quickly asked, what does it look like? Do we have it here? Can I raise it? There are pictures of bicorns and even videos in the encyclopedia, and Keek searched for a section to show her. Man Bao looked at the bicornuate beast that was bigger than a cow and had never seen before, and couldn't help blinking. If you feed it cabbage caterpillars, how many worms will you need to feed? Their chickens are so small they can eat worms. Keek said, so they need to do research. I heard that some research institutes can raise cabbage caterpillars to be as big as a child's arm, and this worm is easy to feed and seems to have good meat quality, so bicorns like it very much. Man Bao shuddered and felt goosebumps covering her arms. She quickly said, okay, I'll catch them all. Don't talk about it, Keek. Keek laughed, do you still want to raise bicorns now? Man Bao resolutely said no, then exited the system, collected the books on the desk, refused Bai Shanbao's invitation to do homework together, and was about to go home with the bookcase on his back. Bai Shanbao felt that these 2 days were full of treasures, so he hurriedly carried the bookcase to chase after her. I saw you shaking just now, are you sick? Man Bao shook his head. Bai Shanbao was a little anxious. You have to say that you are not feeling well, it will be bad if a minor illness becomes a serious illness. Man Bao sighed and said, it's not that I'm sick, it's that I got goosebumps. She pulled up her sleeve to show him her arm. Bai Shanbao looked at it, but didn't see any difference, so he rolled up his sleeves and put them in Manbao's hand for comparison. The two children compared, and there seemed to be no difference, except that Bai Shanbao's arms were thicker and stronger. But this time Bai Shanbao was sure that Manbao was not sick, so he asked again, "You really don't want to go to my house to do your homework?" Manbao shook his head, "I have something to talk to them about." "Then you go to the big head first, and come back to my house after you finish talking," Bai Shanbao said, "it will be faster to do homework with you." Manbao thought about it too. The speed of the two people's homework is relatively fast, and if they make mistakes, they can have a personal check. Manbao nodded, "Then you go back first, I'll find you later." The two separated at the intersection. Before Manbao ran back to Zhou's house, he found Datu and the others by the river not far from Zhou's house. They were beating Mama with wooden sticks, and Xiao Qian was also beside them. Manbao rushed over and shouted, "Sister-in-law, I want them to help me with the work." Little Qian didn't ask what was the matter, and waved to the big ones and said, "Go, don't mess around, go home early." Datu and the others responded happily, and happily followed Manbao. Xiao Qian took over all the work of beating Mama, and the children working by the river looked enviously at the distant Datu and others, while the women looked at Xiao Qian with envy. "Everyone's Zhou, your family has all the hemp been taken back?" Xiao Qian said with a smile, "How can it be so fast? I planted a little more this year, and it takes 2 or 3 days to harvest. It looks like it's going to rain. Many people in the village have not finished harvesting their wheat." "Yeah, the first one to collect is the old Zhou family. The more people there are, the better." Xiao Qian said with a smile, "There are more people to eat?" "There are about 20 people in our family. If we add one this year, we will add another next year. Even if we only cook gruel for 1 day, it will be 7 more than other people's families. 8 times the rice. Look at my family's wheat harvest in a few days, but I don't know how much my family hopes to harvest for a few more days. It means that it's not much. This year is really unfortunate, and I don't know if the rice harvested in autumn will be any better." Little Qian looked worried. "That's true," Lao Zhu also cried and was poor all day long. Lao Zhou had a lot of family, so he ate a lot. But it is also much better than a family with fewer people. The family has a large population. If there are 1 or 2 sick people, they will also be able to support them. Like your eldest family, last time I hurt my stomach and can't do heavy work, but there are still Tuesdays and Wednesdays. How many brothers do they have? Look at the Zhou family, how good they used to be, but now his wife is lying on the bed and can't move. He is the only one who relies on him inside and outside, and there is no help. Yeah, I almost didn't recognize him when I saw him in the morning. By the way, everyone from Zhou, I saw your boss going to cut wheat with Zhou today. He didn't go to Master Bai's house to work. He has a stomach injury," Xiao Qian said with a leaky smile. "My father-in-law didn't dare to let him do heavy work, for fear that the wound in his stomach would be exhausted, so he didn't go. Although the boss of heavy work like picking things I can't do it, but it's fine to cut wheat and beans." The eldest brother and the others have a good relationship with Zhou, and they're still from the villagers, and it's just a matter of helping hands. People are even more envious. Once again, they glanced at the numbness that Xiao Qianxi was beating, and they couldn't help but speed up. Harvesting hemp is a very troublesome thing, at least in terms of the farm work that Manbao has participated in. What she hates most is hemp harvesting. Big head and big girl, they are two. As soon as they were out of sight of the adults, they stretched out their hands to show Manbao their scarred hands and said, "It's all peeled off, and it will always be cut. So Grandma asked us to come to the river to beat the hemp." Tired too. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 310. Farming is very particular about the farming season. In order to compete for a few days in the summer harvest, many farmers have to work day and night, and some even live in the fields. In the past 2 years, Kilai village had a bumper harvest. Joe Dallin, Tuesday and Wednesday lived in the fields in order to seize the farming season. Sometimes, even if they were too tired to straighten their waists, they had to harvest by moonlight and firelight. Otherwise, a year of hard work may be in vain when it rains. Generally, after the rain, the summer harvest can come to an end. Everyone has to collect the hemp, peel it out, soak it, beat it, comb and divide it, then weave the hemp, and then take it to the river for washing and beating. The process is cumbersome and labor-intensive. The last thing that the children of the old Joe family likes is harvesting hemp, and the adults do the same. Because most of the spun linen was handed over to the county government as a blend, in addition to the woven linen, each person had to hand in 3 kilograms of linen. To this end, Laos who took planted rows of hemp on the ridge and field ridge at home, and planted 2 or 3 circles of hemp at the foot of the mountain between himself and Joe Dallin and Wednesday Lang. This thing is drought-resistant and good work, but the craftsmanship is more heavy, but their family can still have some linen to make clothes every year, and other families with a small population may not have extra linen to make clothes. And the linen made by the old Joe family is really not good, and Manbeo doesn't like it very much. She remembers that she only had a new linen, and it turned red not long after she put it on. Later, her mother took it back and took it apart to make clothes for herself. After wearing it for half a year, I dismantled the worn linen clothes to make clothes for her. The clothes that Manbeo wears in summer are mostly linen clothes made from old clothes worn by her mother and sister-in-law. Only in winter, she wears clothes made of cotton bought from the county seed. So for Manbao didn't like it either, so she blew her hands on a few nephews, and then put a candy on their palms. A group of children were instantly comforted, and immediately became happy. While peeling off the candy, they went home with Manbao. Manbao took out a pen, wrote down all the things he needed and the quantities and handed them over to Dadu. My friend still wants to buy these things, you bring 2 heads and they will find them for me. Remember, cabbage caterpillars have to live long enough. Just in case, you bring back a little more, and then pick some more big leaves and bring them back to pack for me. He knew all the characters on the paper, and it wasn't difficult to understand, but what he didn't understand was that it was an argument for who would buy bugs. Shouldn't this kind of thing be a pound? Or even a fight? But it seems a good thing that my sister-in-law's guests are stupid, right? Datu only glanced at the paper and patted his chest and Manbeo to assure that there was no problem, and then asked with a hilarious smile, "Little aunt, the beans at home have been collected, can you tell the second uncle and take us to the county town in a few days to play?" Son. Manbale, I know, you want to sell the candy in your hands, right? A group of children looked at Manbao and laughed. Manbao said, "Second brother will definitely not take you there, but fourth brother should be fine." Aria's eyes lit up and she asked, "Fourth uncle is going to the county too?" "Of course, when the crops of Master Bai's house are finished, I will go up the mountain with my fourth brother to find Fuling, and then let the fourth brother go and help the second brother." If they could still find Poria, Manbao secretly kept a small piece, and then cut it into several pieces and sold it. The encyclopedia gave her 200,000 reward points, so she would sell it for 150,000, and it would be almost the same if she sold 2 copies. This is the conclusion that Manbao thought after looking at a series of lists of his own last night. She found that the higher the points in the encyclopedia, the higher the value here. For example, Tuckahoe and Tree Sparrow, which have the highest points now, aside from Tree Sparrow, Tuckahoe is the most expensive thing their family currently sells. On Tuesday, Lang asked shopkeeper Zheng, and shopkeeper Zheng said that all these things are wild and cannot be grown, so they are very precious. Precious and more effective, it becomes more valuable. But they are selling raw Tuckahoe. Zhou Lang secretly inquired about it. The processed tukaho is of good quality, and the price has more than doubled. No wonder drugstores are so expensive. However, Man Bao feels that no matter how expensive it is, it will not be as expensive in the future. She knew that points were more expensive than copper coins, and a small piece of poria was worth 200,000 points. Man Bao laughed like a little mouse, making Bai Shanbao look at her again and again. In the end, he couldn't bear it anymore, so he reached out and knocked on her head and asked, "What's the matter with you?" Man Bao looked left and right, and finally stared at Daji, who was sitting in the corner. Daji. Bai Shanbao also stared at Daji. Daji silently got up, opened the door, and walked out of the study. He looked in the yard, and finally found a tree to squat. From here, he could see the two children in the study through the window, but he couldn't hear what they were saying. Seeing the good luck going out, Man Bao immediately leaned into Bai Shanbao's ear and whispered, "If I have a lot of things that are very scarce in my hands, do you think it would be better for me to exchange them all for money, or to barter? Are those scarce things of high value to you?" After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "Some are tall, some are not, some are rare, and some can be seen everywhere. Then what do you want in exchange for them?" After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "Wheat seeds. Or other interesting seeds." Today, Datu and the others proposed to go to the county seat. Obviously, they wanted to exchange the candy in their hands for money, but Man Bao knew that the candy business in the county seat might not be easy. In this world, there is a currency that is harder than candy, and a lot of value can be created with only a few points, such as ginger. The 5 kilograms of ginger seeds she bought at the beginning looked much more expensive than candy, but just last year, it made a lot of money for the Zhou family. Its value has long exceeded the seed money she paid. In addition, the wheat in Lao Zhou's family is much better than other families this year. When she went out to Bai's house just now, many old people in the village came to Zhou's house and were discussing with the old Hutu about wheat sowing. Although this year's wheat hasn't been harvested yet, everyone saw it when it was harvested. Now the whole village knows that the wheat of the old Zhou family is the best, and it is a little better than that of Master Bai. Some of the wheat ears were long and full, so the old people in the village wanted to exchange some seeds with the old Zhou family. A good ear of wheat is a good seed, and a good seed can always grow a better ear of wheat. A farmer who has worked all his life does not know anything else, so he still knows the most basic common sense of seed preservation. Others may not know why the wheat in the old Zhou family is better than others in the flood, but Manbao knows. Because she secretly changed some wheat seeds in the spring. Manbao is considering whether to buy another batch of wheat seeds in exchange for some wheat.